Olivia Martin had endured enough disrespect and disregard while waiting at this bank. But when the pivotal moment arrived, could she change the situation and make them realize their mistake? Watch how she confronts the indifference and makes a decision that shocks everyone. What do you think about how Olivia handled this situation? Comment below. Olivia Martin drove into the parking lot of the small, quiet bank on East Main Street. The morning sun had just begun to climb in the sky, casting a soft, golden hue over everything. She parked her silver sedan close to the entrance, stepping out with a quiet confidence, the kind of woman who didn't need to say much to make an impression. At 52, Olivia had built an impressive career, rising from humble beginnings to become the CEO of a rapidly growing financial firm. She was dressed in a simple but elegant navy blouse and dark slacks, her curly hair pulled back into a neat, low puff. She didn't need jewelry to stand out, though gold hoop earrings added a touch of refinement. She grabbed her black leather tote, adjusted the straps on her shoulder, and walked to the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh coffee and printer ink. The first thing Olivia noticed was the lack of warmth. A middle-aged man behind the front desk glanced at her but didn't greet her. There was no welcoming smile, no sense of recognition. She nodded politely and walked toward the business services desk, feeling the cool distance in the room. She had a purpose here, and she wasn't going to let the cold reception stop her. As Olivia made her way to the business services desk, she couldn't help but feel the subtle sting of being ignored. Two tellers were behind the counter, one with red lipstick and a tight bun, the other, an older woman, flipping through a manila folder. Neither of them looked up as Olivia approached. She could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above her and the soft murmur of conversations around the bank, but it felt like she had entered another world, one where she didn't belong. She waited, standing quietly, the minutes stretching on like hours. There were a few other customers in the lobby, but they were greeted promptly, their needs attended to with smiles and pleasantries. Olivia glanced at the clock on the wall. It was now 9:07. The red lipstick teller, Shelby, finally looked up. Olivia smiled politely and spoke. "I'm here to speak with someone about the transition paperwork for the business accounts. My firm completed the acquisition last week, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before Friday." Shelby gave a short, almost dismissive laugh and replied, "You'll need an appointment for that. We don't handle those kinds of things at the counter." The tone was condescending, as if Olivia should have known better. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "I called yesterday," she said calmly. "They told me someone named Devin would be available between 9 and noon. Shelby glanced around, then turned back to her screen. "Devin's not in yet. You can have a seat." Olivia nodded, but there was an undercurrent of frustration now. She turned toward the empty chairs behind her, feeling the sting of her second-class treatment, and sat down. She had the nagging sense that if she hadn't been the woman she was, they might have treated her differently. Olivia sat in the lobby, the soft hum of the bank around her becoming a distant background noise as she waited. Every second that passed seemed to stretch on, and her patience was wearing thinner with each minute. She glanced at the clock. It was now 9:22. The lobby was still bustling with customers, each being greeted promptly, their needs handled with efficiency, their conversations peppered with warm smiles and laughter. She, however, was invisible, relegated to a waiting game as though she had no business being there. Olivia shifted in her seat, trying to steady herself. She wasn't used to this feeling, not in the corporate world she'd fought so hard to be a part of. The minutes dragged on, and with each passing second, her mind became more focused on the scene in front of her. The two tellers were still chatting, oblivious to her presence. It was almost as if she didn't matter at all. Olivia glanced toward the hallway where the offices were, where she knew someone should have been available to meet her by now. She stood up and walked back to the counter, a calmness in her voice that she didn't quite feel. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Has Devin arrived?" Shelby, without looking up from her screen, gave a tight smile. "Not yet, but I did let someone know you're here." Olivia gave a brief nod, her eyes scanning the room. A couple walked in, and immediately they were greeted with warmth and ushered into an office. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the contrast. She returned to her seat, her composure still intact, but a knot tightening in her stomach. Something was off, and it wasn't just the weight. It was how they were making her feel like she didn't deserve their time. Olivia's patience had reached its limit. She stood up again, her movements calm but deliberate, and walked back to the counter. This time there was no hint of hesitation in her steps. She wasn't angry, at least she didn't allow herself to feel that way, but there was a growing sense of resolve. She had been patient, polite, and composed, but the lack of respect, the feeling of being dismissed, was starting to settle deep in her chest. She wasn't just a businesswoman who had built her career from the ground up. She was someone who deserved to be treated with decency, no matter where she went. "Excuse me," she said again, her voice steady, but this time there was an edge to it, something that commanded attention. "Has Devon arrived?" Shelby glanced at her, then turned back to her screen, offering only a tight smile. "Still not in, but I did let someone know." Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly. She could feel the frustration creeping in, but she held it in check. She had dealt with far worse in her career and had learned long ago how to manage such moments with grace. Still, there was something about the way Shelby spoke that rubbed her the wrong way. Olivia didn't move. She stood there for a moment, her gaze fixed on Shelby, waiting for some kind of acknowledgement. But nothing came. "May I speak with whoever's available then?" Olivia asked. Shelby's response was as dismissive as ever. "Ma'am, I told you, we'll call you when someone's ready." Olivia nodded, slowly, carefully. She turned and walked back to her seat, but this time it wasn't about waiting. It wasn't about patience anymore. It was about something deeper. Olivia knew that she was a stranger in this bank, but she was beginning to feel that the real strangers were the people who worked here, the ones who had no idea what it meant to treat others with respect. As Olivia sat back down in the lobby, the minutes continued to drag on like an endless stretch of time. The familiar sounds of the bank, soft conversations, the clink of coins, the quiet hum of the air conditioning seemed distant, almost irrelevant now. Her mind wandered back to the countless meetings she'd led, the deals she'd secured, the people she'd worked with over the years, all of whom had treated her with the respect she deserved, not because of her title, but because of who she was. Yet here she sat, ignored and disregarded, as if her presence didn't matter. A few more customers walked in, and once again they were greeted with smiles, ushered into offices, their needs immediately acknowledged. Olivia watched it all in silence, feeling the quiet sting of being an afterthought in this small, impersonal space. Her phone buzzed in her bag. It was a message from her COO, Ellis Duque. "Everything smooth at the branch?" Olivia glanced at the screen, considering her response. She could tell him everything was fine, smooth and routine, just as it should be, but she knew that wasn't the truth. Her patience was wearing thin, and she wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Instead, she typed back, "Not quite. Give me 10 minutes." She paused before slipping the phone back into her bag. It wasn't just about the wait anymore. It was about the way they had treated her, the way they had treated someone who had the power to change their world in an instant. Olivia looked toward the staff, still oblivious, still going about their business. That's when she heard it. Shelby, in a low voice, muttering to a coworker behind the counter. "Not sure why she's still sitting here," she said. "She's not even dressed for the suite." The words hit Olivia harder than she expected, but she didn't flinch. She didn't react. She simply sat there, silently observing, waiting for the moment when the respect she deserved would be shown, even if she had to demand it. As Olivia sat there, quietly seething on the inside, she remained composed on the outside. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing in on her, the quiet judgment from the staff, the sense that they saw her as nothing more than another anonymous customer, someone they could dismiss without consequence. But that wasn't who she was. She wasn't just another name on a list. She was the CEO of a company that had acquired multiple banks in a single week. She had earned every inch of the success she now held, and the treatment she was receiving in this bank made her feel as though none of that mattered. A few more minutes passed, the silence growing thicker around her. Just as Olivia was about to stand up again, she noticed the regional manager, Richard White, walking into the lobby. He looked somewhat disoriented, scanning the room until his eyes landed on her. Olivia's calm demeanor didn't falter, but she could feel his eyes narrow slightly. Richard had probably been briefed about her presence, though no one had bothered to approach her yet. His expression wasn't warm, but there was something in his eyes that hinted at recognition. He walked up to her with a sense of authority that made the room feel smaller. "Miss Martin," he said, his voice polite but distant. Olivia stood, her posture straight, offering him a slight smile. "Yes," she replied. "I'm Olivia Martin. We've completed the acquisition of this bank chain, and I'm here to ensure everything's in order for the transition." Richard looked behind him, his eyes scanning the staff, and without saying much, he gestured for them all to follow him into the conference room. Olivia followed quietly, her heart steady, knowing that the moment had finally arrived. As she passed the tellers, she couldn't help but glance at Shelby, who quickly looked away. Olivia didn't say a word, but the message was clear. Respect, once earned, could never be taken for granted. The staff had no idea what was coming, but Olivia had seen enough. It was time for a change. The conference room was heavy with tension as Olivia entered, her footsteps echoing faintly in the quiet room. She could feel the eyes of the remaining staff on her, some of them looking down at the table, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Richard, who had led her into the room, stood at the back, arms folded, watching. Olivia didn't waste time with pleasantries. She knew the purpose of this meeting, and there was no need to dance around it. As she moved to the front of the room, she felt the weight of the moment settle in, and without raising her voice, she began. "I came here today on behalf of Trillonix Financial. Last Friday, we completed the acquisition of this bank chain. I've met with over a dozen branches this week, some of them more welcoming than others." She let the words hang in the air for a moment, giving the staff a chance to reflect on the implications. She wasn't angry, but the disappointment in her tone was unmistakable. This branch, however, she continued, her gaze sweeping across the room, was a different experience entirely. I sat in that lobby for over 30 minutes, and during that time, I was ignored, talked about, and dismissed. None of you knew who I was, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. What does matter, however, is how you treat people, no matter who they are, and how you treated me today was unacceptable. The silence in the room was thick now, no one daring to speak. Olivia's eyes locked onto Shelby, who looked up, her face flushed with guilt. "Can you tell me why the woman who came in after me was served immediately while I waited?" Olivia's question was pointed, but there was no anger in it, only the clear demand for an answer. Shelby's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Olivia didn't need her to. She already knew what had happened. "This wasn't about status or power," Olivia said softly. "This was about decency. And if you can't treat someone with that, then you don't belong here." Without another word, Olivia pulled her phone from her bag, typing quickly. "Effective immediately, Shelby Langston, Derek Hanley, and Patricia Mehta are released from this location. You'll receive a formal termination letter from HR by noon, and security access has been revoked." The room fell into a stunned silence. Olivia's voice didn't waver as she finished. "The rest of you will undergo retraining with full oversight. You'll coordinate with Ellis for a follow-up report by Friday. Make sure it's clean, blunt, and real." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in. "I'm not here to scare anyone, but I'm also not here to babysit grown adults who can't treat a stranger with respect." She turned to Richard, who stood silently, watching her with a mix of admiration and apprehension. "Let's make sure this doesn't happen again," she added quietly. And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a stunned group of employees who would remember this moment for the rest of their careers.